Continuing with learning new chords, let's take a look at a ninth chord and a simple major chord. Now, if you manage to get the A minor seventh chord, you shouldn't have too much problem getting this ninth chord I'm going to show you. It's called a D ninth. We place our middle finger on the 5th fret of the 5th string. Again, we want to bend it as we would normally do if we were just placing our fingertip on that note. Then we take our first finger and add it to the 4th fret, 4th string, which is an F sharp. And then with our remaining finger, we flatten out, and in this case, it's not important that it bends up too much if you're having difficulty, because we actually need to press the first string in the bar. So we're barring the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string here, and our first finger and middle finger are in a more upright position on the 4th and 5th string. That's the sound of our ninth chord. In this case, it's a D ninth. Typically, we want our thumb on the edge of the neck and our little finger up, not under the neck. And the little finger, once again, can often stretch out and play an extra note down there on the first string. But you don't need to worry about that right now. The main thing you need to be concerned about is that you're not sticking your finger under the neck. And once again, if we tilt our wrist up, you'll find the chord tends to lock nicely into place. Now, why is it called a D ninth chord when most scales only have 8 notes in them? Well, the simple answer to that is you simply climb up to the 8th note, so we have a D. I'll play a D scale. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. There's our D octave. And our next note in the scale, instead of calling it a second, we call it a ninth. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So really the second is the ninth, but in music we call it a ninth. So there's our D ninth chord there. And of course this chord can be moved around. It's a little bit awkward when you first learn the chord to actually move it around, because your fingers might kind of become disentangled from the shape. Also, when you're doing the A minor 7th and you decide to move the 7th chord up, once again, it takes a bit of practice to maintain the bar and the other finger in a more upright position. So here's our ninth chord, once again, and here's our minor 7th. When switching between A minor 7th and D ninth, you'll notice that my finger that is barring just hops across the gap and covers the 3rd, 2nd, and 1st string instead of just the 4th, 3rd, and 2nd. So I'm here with my A minor 7th, and I'm here with my D ninth. And these two go together really well when you're strumming. You can put in little bass notes and little slides, but we'll be doing that later on when learning how to play rhythms with these chords. Now let's take a look at a very simple major chord we'll be using. As you recall, when you bar on the 5th fret with an E major shape, it's no longer E major, but an A major chord. Now, if we take a look, we can play that chord without hitting all the strings. We can shape it down a bit by just using this note from the 4th string, but I'll switch fingers to my 3rd finger, middle finger here, and I'll do a mini bar on the 1st and 2nd string. Now that will give us an A major chord without the need to hit the 6th and 5th string. We'll be using that in different rhythms later on as well. And finally, I would like to show you another kind of ninth chord, not played like this, but an E ninth, which I will play down here. Now, to do this chord, we don't need to bar, which is nice. We put the middle finger on the 5th string at the 7th fret. We put our first finger on the 6th string of the 6th fret of the 4th string, correction there, and our 3rd finger on the 3rd string at the 7th fret, and our little finger on the 2nd string at the 8th fret, and in this case we can hit all 6 strings. And I may point out that the note that I'm pressing here with my middle finger on the 5th string is an E, the same as the open 6th string. And when you ever have chords down here, you get the possibility, and this sounds quite cool, to be able to drone, like hit the bass notes and they drone together and resonate, so you can get some very interesting sound effects here. Now, continuing along, we're going to learn a 7th chord. In this case it'll be a D7, which is really a variation of our A major shape, slightly altered. I'm at the 5th fret. If you recall, our root note is on the 5th string here. This would give us a D major, but once again we want the 7th note in the D scale to be contained in the chord. Now, without playing the scale like I did earlier on, just take my word for this and I'll show you how the chord shape goes. We want a bar on the 5th fret, our 3rd finger on the 4th string 7th fret, and here we want to have our 3rd string covered by our bar at the 5th fret, so nothing pressed down on the 3rd string, but we want our little finger on the 2nd string 7th fret, and I'll strum from the 5th string down, and that gives us our D7. So if I move that up 2 frets, D, D sharp, E, I would have an E7 chord. There's our D7 again. Now, we'll be using that chord later on in one of our rhythms, so you should learn this one. And we'll also be using a new chord, which will be a minor 7th chord played based around our A minor shape. So we're going to play it really with a minor shape. I'm going to be at the 5th fret. Let's do a D minor chord. If you recall, you set that up by barring at the 5th and pressing down an A minor shape. But to get our 7th note, we just simply lift off our little finger, and it gives us a nice, soft sound, really. There's our minor chord, and there is our minor 7th. Typically, you can use a lot of effects with this chord, with hammering on, which I'll teach you how to do, of course, later on in the rhythm sections. But there's our D minor 7th. If I move it up like this, I can play an E minor 7th. The nice thing, once again, about E minor is because our 6th string open is an E, we don't really have to bar at the 7th fret all the way across. We can move our finger down and get our droning E, or a lower E, to resonate with the chord. That way it's not so important to protect ourselves if we hit that 6th string, because it blends and sounds perfect with the chord. If I move back to E flat minor 7th and I don't cover that 6th string and I accidentally hit it, just listen to this. Ugly, isn't it? Horrible sound. So anywhere else, cover the 6th string, try and hit from the 5th down, because that's your key note. If you accidentally miss, you'll be covered. On the 7th fret, you can move down and get a nice droning E. Now there's one more E minor 7th chord I want to show you while you're here, and it looks like this. My 1st finger becomes upright, it's not barring anymore. 7th fret, 5th string. I put my middle finger now on the 3rd string at the 7th fret, like that. My 3rd finger on the 1st string at the 7th fret, and my little finger on the 2nd string at the 8th fret. I'm forming like a D-shaped chord, but instead of using those fingers, I'm actually using these. And I put my 1st finger here, and my 1st finger, while it's slightly upright, it's also leaning on the 4th string and allowing me to mute it out. Now here I can play the 6th and 5th string, get my nice drone sound, and I can get the chord played on the other strings like this. I can hit them all together if I wish, or I can go. That's an E minor 7th chord with an alternative fingering to the one we used down here like this. Very useful chord to know in the key of E minor.